Welcome to the Guapify Podcast. Today, our guest is Khayla McCoy, founder of Opal, a community centered around redefining the relationship women have with money. And she offers so much practical support for those on their journey to financial freedom. We hear Kayla's story on making $40,000 a year in New York City to making over $200,000 annually, and what she lives by in terms of her money values, aligning your money with your value, paying yourself first, becoming financially free through an abundant mindset, dealing with those pesky student loans, and preparing for layoffs by being proactive in your financial planning. It is an incredible conversation, and I'm so excited for you all to hear. Khayla McCoy, I am so excited to have you join us on the Guapify podcast. It is amazing to finally get time to talk to you. Just for background, I learned about who you were from LinkedIn because I came across your article that was written about your journey from making $40,000 a year in New York City to $200,000 in total compensation when you joined Google, and just your passion around financial freedom, your brand called Opal, and the desire to financially empower women through financial literacy, which is something I'm so aligned with in everything we stand for on the Guapify podcast. So it's going to be a great conversation to just learn more about your background, your relationship with money, the desire to create Opal and what it's doing currently, and just all the gems that you have to drop for us. So let's get into it. I definitely just want to hear you introduce yourself to our audience and give us a little background about who you are in your own words.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here with Guapify. My name is Khayla McCoy. I'm originally from Madisonville, Tennessee, so very small town country girl, and you might hear some of that in my accent through the interview. I've always been really passionate about supporting women. I grew up in a very matriarchal, kind of multi-generational household, so that was super influential in how I navigate the world. And I'm passionate about obviously personal finance, especially for Black women, but also love sports. March Madness is on my TV all the time right now. These games have been driving me crazy. So definitely also love things outside of money and career as well.
I love that. And I mean, I feel like sports, that's another place to make money. So there's that
Yep.
intersection for sure. So you being from Tennessee originally, just I'm gonna assume small town, being a New Yorker,
hmm
and you shared in your article that it was more of an impoverished environment, and you always had a desire to make money and understand that like financial freedom was the access. You actually say in your article, money can buy happiness. So I want to hear a little
Yeah.
bit, what was your relationship to money growing up?
Um, it started so early, and I just remember conversations that I overheard the adults and like my big people having when I was super young, right? I'm talking like kindergarten, very, very little. And it was always around a lack of money. I think when I think back or when I work with people and they talk about their first introduction to money, it's usually something associated with a lack or a conversation around a lack, because when you have money and you're comfortable, the topic doesn't necessarily come up as much. It's like, I don't have to think about buying this milk because I have the money to do it. So it's not something to discuss. So I think the early messages and narratives were both impactful based on what I heard and experienced, but also based on what I saw other people experiencing, right? Because I grew up in a small town, but I think those of us who have had that experience understand that weird kind of juxtaposition that you can sometimes sit in when you're not the poorest, but you're in a group of poor people. And so, like, while I was, my family comparatively was, kind of fine, I definitely sat right next to the people in class or played sports right next to the people in class or lived across the street with the people who were, having government aid or, having their cars repossessed or just whatever it was. So it was both very much a direct and indirect experience with just a lack narrative and lifestyle associated with money.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us can relate to that, just being like in the neighborhood where you see people
Yeah.
without the needs, right? And like that can impact even that poverty mentality, which I'm curious, how did you sort of avoid coming into agreement with this lack or poverty mentality and have this deep desire to say, like, no, I want financial freedom? Like, where did that come from?
So I didn't avoid it. I definitely came out of the gate with a lack mindset, and I saw that manifest throughout my life in terms of delayed gratification. Like I remember my first job out of college, I was living in New York, and one of my friends who was living in Boston came to visit me, and I had these shoes that or these boots that I had been wearing like all through the winters, and she looked at these boots and she's like, you need new shoes. Like this is we're done here. And I'm like, oh, but I don't want to spend that money. And she was like, you have money to spend, you're not broke, So there were instances where it was like, I'm gonna save this instead of getting myself what I need. And that is a lack mindset. I think sometimes, especially the narrative that we are coached in the financial industry is all about discipline, it's all about minimalism, it's all about, cutting back. And that's really painful for me to watch be received by Black and brown folks because most of us are already experiencing forced minimalism, like we're already experiencing that. So I didn't avoid it, but I do think over time I was able to kind of coach myself. And honestly, therapy really helped me validate the fact that it's okay to, support yourself and to invest in yourself in certain ways.
I love that. That's so practical and force minimalism, right? Just like not
Hmm.
having. And so when you do buy something that's a little more costly, it feels like indulgent rather than an investment in
Hmm.
yourself, which is
Hmm.
incredible. So just to kind of highlight your story, when you came to New York, you weren't necessarily like rolling the dough and living in abundance. You had a journey to actually earning a livable salary and experiencing the impact of like leveling
Sure.
at each, increase. And I'm curious, just like, how does it feel going from a small town and then living on 40,000 a year to now
Yeah.
making, high six figures? Like, how has that impacted
Yeah.
you holistically?
It feels crazy. I think that when when we have this conversation in the community, a lot of people talk about generational wealth. And when I hear it and I talk to people directly, I hear this desire for like an instantaneous change, which is valid, right? Like if you're someone who's strapped for cash or who's had to make it work for this long, you just want to break. Like you want to look in your bank account one day and realize like the contract went through or, the offer was signed and now you have all this money in the bank. And I think the problem with that, and we see that with athletes, is that if you have not been trained on how to navigate the terrain, you are inevitably going to fall at some point. And so while it was difficult to kind of work my way up to that 200K mark, I am so grateful that it came gradually and it came through that, less than 40K salary. And then it came through unemployment because I was taking care of an ill parent. And then I had to figure out how to get back into the workforce. And so there were all these kind of back and forth steps that helped prepare me to get to where I am now. But I mean, even when the article came out and I saw the headline and it had 200K on it, I was like, that is that me? That's not right. Like really? So and when I do my taxes, I still have this oh shit moment where I'm like, how did I get here? But I am very grateful that it was a gradual process, but it does still feel really weird sometimes, especially when I go back home and I'm immediately reminded of where I come from.
Absolutely. I definitely want to talk about what that feels like going back home as someone who made it. But you made a really good point that it was gradual. So it also allowed you to create some healthy disciplines because it wasn't like
Mhm.
you just, increase your salary and now you just are rolling in this money and you have no idea what to do. You did have some like practical tools and resources on managing money. I'd love for you to share just a few, one, two, three, like the things you live by when it comes to being financially sound as you increase in your income or your resources.
Mhm. So one of the things that's really, really important is pay yourself first, and meaning like through savings and investing. And so I remember when I was younger in my earlier career, I was always really conscious about debt. Like I wanted to get to zero debt. That was so critically important to me. And I would do that at the expense of my emergency fund. And so I remember one time I had built up my emergency fund and it was like in a healthy place. I had like 3 or so months. And then I wanted to pay off a lot of like student loan and credit card debt. So I emptied my emergency fund, I paid that off. And then quite literally the next month I had an emergency. And I had to put that emergency back on my credit card because I had emptied my emergency fund, right? And so paying yourself first is so critically important because it's what prevents you from getting into those debt cycles. So that's the number one. That's one of the ones that I definitely live by. The other thing is aligning your money to your values, and I think that this was quite literally life changing for me because I recognized how much I had healed and grown from that lack mentality or that desperation mindset when I was starting to align my money to my values. Because when you are coming from a place of desperation or lack, you do not have time to worry about what your values are. Like it is a non-factor. Like we do not care. We are trying to reach baseline and that's it. And so while it while it's difficult to do, it's so important to do because when you're making decisions from desperation, that again is what can kind of keep you in these debt cycles. Like I was desperate to get out of debt, so I made a desperate decision. But if I had been aware at the time that I valued peace of mind and security, then I would have made a different decision, right? I would have continued maintaining my emergency fund and I would have paid my debt down over a longer time frame. So I think those are two critically important things to really be able to focus on in your personal finance journey.
Oh my God, you said so many good things. I'm just like here clapping and snapping because, like you said, you have to first have the discipline to create a savings plan. So coming up with a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, right? And then
Mhm.
recognizing that that needs to be valued as your emergency fund and slowly paying debt off. And you talked about just like the desperation being in survival mode. So like that
Mhm.
mindset shift first has to happen in order to manage the money. Because if you're constantly in a place of desperation, you're reacting and responding is no opportunity
Yeah.
for proactivity or preparation, which is just
Mhm.
like so helpful, I think, for anyone listening that it really does start with your mindset first. And
Totally.
it's hard to like say that because people are like, I got bills to pay. Like, what do you mean by my mindset? But
Yeah.
it really is like, coming into an abundance mindset. So that's
Mhm.
incredible. You mentioned going back home and it feeling surreal. Do you feel pressure when you go back home to kind of ball out, be the person to hold everyone down, pick up the check, or is that not the experience you have because people are respectful to, that you came back home, you made a little money, but we're not going to hold you?
I'm the queen of boundaries. It's like a running joke with my friends, like I set a boundary and I set them hard. And so I think my family is very understanding of that fact. And also my family is very respectful of my success. Like they see me be successful and they're really proud. And so yeah, but I'm very good about boundaries and I think that's really important for Black women in particular. And I try to show that and lead by example in that way because we are the queens of saving the community, right? Like we go above and beyond. I know we're in like that 92% rest phase now, but I still see so many of us who are really overextending in ways that we have been literally built to. This is ancestral, it goes all the way back. And so I don't feel that pressure because of the boundaries that I've consistently learned to set, but I can absolutely understand, and I do see often where other people are feeling that pressure.
Oh, I love that. So, for folks who feel the pressure to kind of save the family, please create boundaries so we're not all like just broke all over again, right? Like that kind of
Yeah, yeah.
preserve the reserves. Actually, you talked about Black women and just kind of the pressure that we feel to show up. And, Edip Poll is all about redefining the relationship women have with money. And I love that. Like when I saw that your site said your journey to financial freedom, I was like a woman after my own heart because I definitely want to hear just a little more about how you created Edip Poll, what was the impetus for it. I think I can imagine what it was, but from your
Mhm.
words and just sort of what are you offering women like myself who are looking for more financial support, financial community, just kind of the practical opportunities of connecting with the community that you're building?
Yeah. So when I was starting my personal finance journey right out of college, I did all the things that people tell you to do. Like I read all the books, I reached out to personal finance professionals, I tried to build a team, and it was darn near impossible for me to feel connected and feel like I was being spoken to in terms of my own situation. And that was mainly because, one, a lot of the trajectories and a lot of the advice in the traditional financial services industry are built with one type of person in mind. It is built with a straight, cisgender, heterosexual white male in mind, and that's it. So, like all of those income trajectories, all of those, savings models, that's who those things are built for in the traditional market. And we see that shifting, right? We've seen a lot of women like Elevest and Financial Diet and things like that pop up that are they're far more women focused. But even in that mix, I still felt like this is not speaking to me necessarily as a Black woman. Like there are still things that I'm experiencing because of the intersectionality of my identity that is going to change how I not only feel about money, how I value it, and how I spend it. And so I wanted to create Edible with that in mind, and that with that being the forefront of how we create all content, all curriculum, all of those things, because it matters. I think one of the things that really made me look not just at my own finances differently, but the Black community's finances differently was when I started really studying the history of the Black community in this country. And I credit my alma mater, Spelman, for really, really getting me started with that. But when I learned about all of the policies and all of the not just social dynamics, but the literal financial and economic policy dynamics that are in place that have prevented the Black community from building wealth, it forced me to look at this with far more grace for myself and for the community, because there are just things that we have been up against that have created exactly what we're seeing now, exactly the wealth gap, exactly the wage gaps, those sorts of things. And so Edible is really supposed to be the answer to that. It's supposed to share the history, it's supposed to share the context, it's supposed to help you feel okay with the fact that money is emotional, because it is. Money is psychological, those sorts of things. And so I wanted to create this space and community for us to have those more holistic conversations that I saw missing in the market.
I love that. It's so timely, it's so practical, it's so solution oriented. Money is
Thank you.
emotional. It's all of those things. I am subscribed to your newsletter, and
Thank
most
you.
recently I saw you share what to do for layoffs, for sessions, like how to
Hmm.
prepare rather. And I wanted to talk to you about that because it feels very timely in the
Yeah.
economic landscape where folks are experiencing layoffs left and right, crippling student loan debt, changes in Department of Education, and just feeling funny about their money. And so,
Hmm.
how would you just encourage someone like myself, right? Like a young Black millennial mom of two, to get prepared for the unexpected?
Oh my goodness. Please check on your student loans, y'all. If they are federal, please check on those student loans and know like what's going on with them. And check probably weekly, right? There's a new news article out there every week. So be checking weekly. Again, I think, one of the most important things is the emergency fund. And historically, the guidance has been like 3 to 6 months of money for your emergency fund, which I actually think was one of those things that just didn't work for Black folks because, frankly, we have far more on the table and far more to lose 9 times out of 10. So I always encourage people to try to get up to a year, which is no chump change, right? Like that is a significant amount of cash to be having in your bank account. And it takes time to build that. And so knowing that, I always, ask people to make really small goals, like can you get up to 2 weeks of emergency savings? Like, and then can you get up to a month? And then, as you keep going, you see it build. So you build it over time, but I would ask people to absolutely prioritize that because you just never know, especially in this economy, when that layoff is going to happen. And even if you do get severance is likely not going to see you through until you get your next role. So it's important to have that emergency fund. The other thing that I would really caution people is to be very thoughtful the about the information that you are receiving, because the media is always going to really, really play up or play down the reality of the situation. And so it would behoove you to familiarize yourself with a variety of different media sources. Definitely don't just get information from TikTok. If anything is sensationalized, that is probably your first red flag that you need to double check things. And I don't expect everybody to become an economist. I just want people to have a variety of different sources, because in these times, the media will always sensationalize things. Sometimes that is on purpose and with specific intent and agenda, and you need to be aware of that as a Black person consuming news. So those are the two things that I would ask people to be very thoughtful about.
Definitely want to make sure we get an opportunity to do our favorite part of our conversations with our guests, which is rapid fire. So we have questions that we're going to ask you. I'm going to ask you. The first one is, and I think you might have answered this, so I'm actually going to ask you, what's a personal finance motto you live by?
I definitely live by pay yourself first. And the other one is spend per your values.
Spend per your values, pay yourself first. I really just wanted you to repeat that, which is why I picked that one again. Okay, first thing you do if you won the lottery.
Oh my goodness. So I would pay off the remainder of my student loans because, y'all, I am still very adamant about being debt free. I would set up a trust. And then I would plan a vacation. Like, I'm sure we all need a break. So I would definitely spend some money on a vacation.
I love that. Okay. Minimum balance or statement balance?
Statement balance. Please do not carry credit card debt.
Thank you. Say less. Cash or credit card?
It depends on how financially savvy and disciplined you are in managing your credit card balances. I think credit cards can be really beneficial in specific use cases. But if you're not at that state yet, then just do cash.
Okay, that's fair. And last one, how do you celebrate a big financial win?
Food. I love food. So it's either like my favorite dessert or taking myself out to a nice restaurant or anything food related.
Love that. Who can turn down a good meal?
Yes.
Definitely agree. Thank you so much, Kayla. It was amazing chatting with you. You really are just like a pioneer. You're dynamic.